Welcome back, everyone. Today we got a whole bunch of big saws. And if you remember, we had our Neotech clone and our 3120 just the other day. This one got built up as a gas race saw, and this one's still stock. But you hear all the time that a big power head on a short bar is going to be fast either way. So I figure we'll throw in our steel 088 here. We built this one up as a milling saw, and all three of these are going to have the same 16-inch 60 drive link loop of steel RS chain and a 9-pin rim sprocket. So short bar, big saw, and a pretty decent sized sprocket. We got our 3120 racer all built up and done. I'll put up a little video of inside the cylinder of this one. So here is the finished gas race 3120. This is the OEM cylinder. We gave it more intake, added some nice deep finger ports, raised the uppers, cut the band, and we raised the exhaust a decent bit. So I'm hoping that this port work here, along with the muffler mod, added high speed jet, is enough to get 15 horse out of our OEM saw. And whatever we learn from this one, we can apply towards our Neotech. And this steel 088 came in, had a little bit of a mark on the piston, so we cleaned it up and we did a milling type port job because that's what the customer is going to do with it. And our Neotech still all stock. So we'll get a baseline with the Neotech 3120. Then we got our gas racer, and then we'll see how the 088 milling saw stacks up. And then we'll look at the power curves on all three of these saws to see if it really is any different for a saw built for milling versus an all-out gas race saw. So stick around and we'll get these cuts done. All right, we'll try and get these cuts done with our milling 880. Said 60 drive link, 16-inch steel 3/8 RS. And we've got 8x8 piece of poplar. So this is fast wood, but every saw is getting tested in it. Big saw, short bar. Does it really matter if it's race ported or milling ported? So we'll see if this one plays nice. Alrighty, that sounded pretty good, felt pretty good. I'm going to get this chain swapped over to our Neotech. We'll get a couple more cuts, try and beat this rain. Here we have bone stock Neotech. These base lines will work for this one and the gas race saw. It was down a little bit on power, but we're going to call it close enough because we just started tearing down and built the other one. And we haven't got around to building this one. But same 60 drive link chain. And same piece of wood. We'll make a few cuts with this. We'll time them all and see which one comes out on top. I do already have this warmed up, so. That's to be expected. I was really pushing hard on those couple of cuts, just like I was the racer and the milling saw, and we just didn't have the power to keep spinning the chain. Well, you just seen all the cutting footage. Do you think we actually hit our 15 horse goal on the 3120 racer? And what kind of power do you think? We know that this one is right close to the 8 horse. So what kind of power do you think that milling saw put out? And the 592 that we snuck in there. I figured that would be a good example of more of a normal work saw versus these bigger ones. We do quite a bit of the 90cc, so that's a 90cc with a 9-pin and the same 16-inch chain that everything else was using. So I thought that'd be a good comparison. But we'll actually look at the times on these saws. Now, for our clone, we had 2.03 seconds average on those cuts. And then we had the 088 milling saw. That was 1.61 average. Then the 592 squeaked it out just by a little bit, 1.51. And then our racer came out on top, 1.17. So that works out to be just a bit above 73% quicker than the clone. Same exact chain, same exact sprocket. So we definitely put out a good bit more power than we had on our clone. Then the 592 just edged out the 088. And a lot of that has to do with how it runs higher in the RPM. 088 wasn't very far off. Maybe if we had a 10, we could have pushed harder, utilized the torque and lower RPM to overcome that. But like I said, this was just to show that a big saw with a short bar doesn't necessarily cut faster. Because like I said, this one got outdone by a good bit, and the milling saw both got outdone by a ported 592. So the goal is going to be to make this clone outrun where we ended up with this gas saw, because our clone, we're going to go all out. We'll have a pipe on it. We'll probably run the alky nitro mix. So let me know what issues you think we're going to run into along the way, or if this thing will just scatter to pieces. But fingers crossed it'll hold together and we can make more power.
Wow, that one really made a lot of power, but I could do better.
So here's the results. And we did actually hit our 15 horse goal. 15.47 and 8.74 foot-pounds out of our gas racer. But our clone came in just a little bit less horse. This is the stock 3120 here, and our clone was a bit less. So that's the little green lines down here. And if we remember, our clone was following it, but just a little bit less. And then we had our ported 592, 9.48 horse, 5.81 foot-pounds. Then our milling 088, 11 horse, 7.55 foot-pounds. And you can see, just the way we have it ported, the way it's tuned, the way it's built, that 088 is not reaching the RPM that these other ones are. It has more than our stock 3120, but this curve is really typical of what you'll see from our milling type builds. Nice, broad power, no real big peaks, lots of torque, nice and smooth. So that'll be one, and I'm thinking that's why the 592, the way that they run out, this is going to hold power a little bit better in the wood because of the way that they're loaded. So our 592 could hold the chain speed up higher, and when we were pushing to try and utilize the torque of the 088, we were actually down here. So we had a lot of power, but it's not as much chain speed as up here. Then the racer, it just blew everything out of the water, power and torque wise. And that is one thing here I do want to note. This is the torque line for our 088 for a milling build. This is the torque line for our 3120 racer. You can see, even though it's built as a racer with big ports, lots of duration, it is still making more peak torque, and it's actually holding it longer. So the longer we can hold this torque, and the higher RPM we can make it. So our torque peak is right around this 7,000, where it's closer to 6 for the milling saw. So we move the peak RPM up, and it's just holding this torque longer. And that all has to do with the durations and the way that it's running. So the longer we can hold this torque and more RPM, the more power we can make. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way all these turned out. Like I said, I just want to throw that 592 in here. I needed to test it. Well, actually, I threw that 592 in because this customer won the race last year with a 592 and 8-pin that wasn't ported. So he was hoping to step his game up, and I'm thinking this 3120 is going to do that. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think our 3120 clone is even going to come close to this. Maybe we'll test it muffler, and I know that we're definitely going to end up with a pipe on it, but maybe if enough people are interested, we'll test it with the muffler. But let me know if you think that one's actually going to hold the power or if it's just going to be a bunch of pieces. So, till next time, thanks a lot, everyone.